All right, this is ninth grade. We're reviewing for the test tomorrow on Roland. We're looking at the terms that are going to be on the test, the literary terms, number 7 on the review sheet. So the two new terms that you had not seen probably before this year is mirroring and rapprochement. Anyone want to describe what mirroring is?
Is mirroring like two similar like scenes in a book?
Yes. Scenes, settings, events, even characters could said to mirror each other. We need an example. I'm going to ask you. I could ask you, a long answer is what I'm trying to get at, like a paragraph length answer for this, which means you would need examples. Did you have an example?
I have an example. With the battle with the Saracens and or Roncevaux, how they both happen to have the same amount of peers and they like fight each other one-on-one kind of.
All right. So the peers of the French are mirrored by the peers of the Spanish.
But does that count? Because I know they get beat, so obviously it's not exactly mirrored. But is that still?
Well, the fact that they are the same, I think, is a good example of mirroring. Yeah.
Would one be like when the two kings are both in like the garden?
When the story opens, there's similarities. There's a garden, there's a city, there's an army, there's a tree, there's a throne, there's a king. In two separate scenes. One is Marsilian, and then one is Charlemagne. So all the setting around that mirrors the other setting. Two examples that Mariah came up with, which I thought were great. The scene where Roland wants to, Oliver asks Roland to blow the horn, and Roland won't do it, is mirrored several pages later when Roland wants to blow the horn, and Oliver disagrees with him. So it's a similar scene, kind of flipped. Also, when Roland nominates Ganelon for the job of being the messenger, is mirrored later when Ganelon nominates Roland to be head of the rear guard. So that's how mirroring works. That's 3 or 4 examples. When Roland nominates Ganelon near the beginning of the poem, is mirrored later when Ganelon nominates Roland to be in the rear guard. And you can even say Oliver and Roland mirror each other. They're identical in many ways, best friends, and yet they differ because one's wise and one's fierce. Yes.
Is this like
Not the next one.
the one we're reading out this year?
Yeah. All right. So let's go to rapprochement. Yes.
It's a repetition of a phrase with slight differences in style, dictation, or tone.
One more time. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
A repetition of a phrase with slight differences in style, dictation, or tone.
Yes. It's a little harder to give examples because I'm asking you to kind of remember exact wording or similar wording. So can anybody give me an example of rapprochement? Yes.
So it said, I know he's lived 200 years and more, and then 200 years I know have passed his life.
That's a great example. Another one, yeah.
Is when Roland's dying, the beginning of like 330 after all, like Roland felt the pain and the weight of dying.
Well, I don't remember that, but that would be an example. If that's how it works, that's not one that I particularly. That would be how it works.
Because it was like, it always started out with like him, like being okay or something. Yeah. So like Roland's death.
And of course, you won't have your book tomorrow when we do this, but that would be a good thing to do because we mark these. There's another one, I can't remember, 230. Anyway, it says, fierce is the battle and mighty is the enemy or something like that. And then it comes right around and says the same thing again 3 times. I just don't see it right off the top. But those are examples. And if you find one while we're going through this, let us know. All right, so those are the 2 new ones you probably didn't know about. Hyperbole extreme exaggeration, catalogs, lists. We didn't read it, but there's several times where there are two lists, one for the Saracens and one for the French. So catalogs even are an example of mirroring. Foreshadowing, you know what that is. Apostrophe, Roland speaks to the dead body of Oliver, because Oliver's not there anymore. And so that would be an example of apostrophe. Parataxis we marked out, so you can mark it out. Foreshadowing is on there twice. Chanson de geste means song of deeds. Song of Roland is one of these chansons de geste.
What is it again?
Song, literally song of deeds. And Song of Roland is one of those stories that are known collectively as Song of Deeds.
So that can be like an example for that one?
So-
Song of
So
Roland
like,
is
if
an
you
example.
say that, would you say that's the Song of Roland?
No, Chanson de Geste is a series of books, and Song of Roland is one of those books. Okay. Jongleur is the guy who recites it. He's not the guy who wrote it. Who wrote it? Who wrote Song of Roland?
It's on the.
That's the answer. We don't know. So the jongleur is not the writer, he's the performer. L'essai means verse. I'm sorry, means stanza. L'essai is a stanza. Verse could be one line, or another definition is that it's poetry that's for children, or that's probably the best way to say it. It's children's poetry. Dr. Seuss wrote verse, not poetry. Poetry is a sophisticated, complex kind of writing. What he wrote we call verse. Slant rhyme,
Oh, the consonants and like the syllables.
like, those are the words, yeah, those are words we should use. Two words that share the same sound without rhyming, like boy and toy rhyme. Base and may do not rhyme. Base, B-A-S-E, and may don't rhyme, but they share assonance. They have the same A sound, so that would be an example. Look through the book. Every stanza consists of slant rhyme. Every single stanza in all 200 and however many there are, 193. So those are examples. All right, double entendre. Something could mean two different things at the same time. It's a double entendre. All right, so those are terms that you must study. They will be there. May not use all of them, but you need to be prepared. Yes.
On the front of that sheet, there's, like the last bullet point of number one.
Yeah.
It's the verse, it's what it is.
All right. The verse means how would you describe the poetry in the book? The book is a poem. So how would you describe the poetry? Every line, or most every line, has 10 syllables in it. Every line, or most every line, is end stop. That means there's a punctuation mark at the end of it. Comma, semicolon, colon, period, exclamation, question. All those, every line ends. Now, again, not every line. There are 4,000 lines here. There are some that are that don't, but the vast majority of them are end stopped. And slant rhyme is the rhyme scheme, which means every line sounds like the one beforehand. And then AOI, we know what that is. Right? We know what that is, right? We don't know what that is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point.
That's the point, right? Liza Min.
What is, example of hyperboles?
How about you? Can anybody think of examples of hyperbole? Don't include the supernatural. Separate the hyperbole from the supernatural, like an angel, a dream, a sword. Those would be examples of supernatural. his age is exaggerated. He's not, no one's 200 years old.
Oh,
Yeah,
that time somebody was describing the other person was like, he's the best out of everybody or something.
right, whenever they said this, nothing like this battle has ever taken place or ever will take place in the history of the world, that's clearly hyperbole. And you would expect hyperbole in an epic story, right? Yeah.
I was gonna say, that since it's an epic story, pretty much everything is hyperbole.
Right, that's what you're buying when you get into an epic story. Very good. The numbers are inflated. 400,000 Spanish troops die at once by drowning. That's the numbers. 220,000 have beaten 100,000. Now those kinds of numbers are exaggerated. Roland dies. He fights all day, but doesn't die from a wound inflicted by the enemy. That's exaggeration. All right. So what I'd like to do is go back to this sheet, and just again, if you can keep your notes out, but don't look at them. See if you know the answer. And I'd like to include everybody. So I'd like everybody to get a chance to answer one. But again, we know the answers because they're right in front of you. But try not to look at them. So in practice, yeah.
These are actually
Real fast, right? Right now is an important part. All right, so let me begin. Everybody get this out? What? Yeah, I got it right here.
I'm gonna try going off memory. I've already read all of it.
All right, again, raise your hand if you have the answer without looking, and we'll go through this.
For the virus, say, would we even like need an example for that? Because that's just kind of like all the paragraphs.
No,
and stuff.
no,
Okay.
just define it. All right, number one, tell me what happened at Roncevaux.
The army's reverse ambush
Yeah,
and slaughtered.
and slaughtered, very good. Number three, could we skip number two? Number three is Marsil or Marsilian. You want to tell me about him?
He's the king of the Saracens. And he's not a Christian, but they want him to become a Christian. And then Charlemagne is against him.
You almost could say Marsil mirrors Charlemagne in some respects, or Marsilian might mirror Roland. It's kind of a similar type person. You remember how I did it with Beowulf? It'll be the same. There's so much to say about Marsilian, and if I do a matching thing, I will put something in there, but it might not be the most obvious thing. So you have to know the character pretty well. Say, oh, that sounds like Marsilian. So I'm going to pick something about him that may not be the most obvious that you need to be able to match. Who is the emir? Somebody else, without looking. Dominic. Okay, what does the word mean? Lord, yeah, it's a religious title in Islam. Yeah, Nasru Balagan. Would somebody define mirroring for us? Yeah.
Mirroring is when, like an event or like a part in the past that reflects another part, like how, when, Charlemagne was standing outside of his capital city with all his councils, and then in another scene, Marsilian was outside with his councils in front of the city.
Very good. So when one scene, place, or person reflects or is identical in some ways to another scene. And that could be one I could ask you to give me several examples. That could be a short answer instead of a short ID, just a definition. How about the same thing for Raposha, a definition and an example? We just did these. So. All right? Yes, Caroline.
So Raposha is repeating of like the same line or like similar phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
And then an example. The only thing that I can think of that's example is not in the book, but like in one of Martin Luther King's speeches, he repeats like the same phrasing at the beginning of each paragraph.
Well, and this is be a chance. This is something all of you can look up. Study it for tomorrow. Make sure you give me at least one example of how Raposha works in this book.
You want us to like memorize
one? Yeah. Or two?
It's, I can't remember like the exact wording, but it's when Oliver dies and they repeat like 3 times that how he's feeling
Well,
and like.
look it up so that you can at least give me a facsimile of the line. You don't have to get it word for word. For instance, I'm thinking of a line that says, "Fierce is the battle and wondrous is the day." I know the word fierce is in there. And the next line it says, "Brutal is the battle and magnificent is the day." And another line, does it 3 times. So the words are almost exactly the same. They mean the same. But that would be how Raposha works. So I'd accept something like that, a paraphrase of it.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Oliver feels that he is hurt to death. Oliver feels he's wounded mortally, and Oliver's face when Roland on him looked.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Somebody talk about the glove and the representation of the right hand. And
It typically represents like a king's favor, so
represent what?
a king's like favor, or giving someone their favor.
Authority,
or
power,
authority,
yeah.
yeah, that makes more sense. It's used in the story a couple times. One I remember is one where, Roland, when he's dying, he gives his glove to God. And the other time is when Ganelon is supposed to go talk to the Saracens. Charlemagne gives Ganelon his glove to show that he's approved of the meeting. And also, someone's right hand gets chopped off. Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Marcillian.
Marcillian.
What was that first example you gave?
Oh, he gives his right glove to God.
Yeah. Roland is the right hand or right arm of Charlemagne. Did you mention the dropping of the glove? Did you say that? Charlemagne gives the glove to Ganelon, which he drops. So that's terrible. So the right hand, the glove, is very important in the story. And I shared with one class, didn't know about the dexter and the sinister part. And
Oh, yeah, that
we
was.
were talking about yesterday. I gave Charlotte credit for that. All right, we did number 8. We just gave a couple of examples, and that would be definitely one that would warrant a longer answer, because there's so many examples that we know of. All right, how about examples of supernatural, keeping in mind that superhuman is not supernatural. So something clearly supernatural, yeah.
Like when the Franks and the Saracens were like dying, and the angels would come get the Franks and the Satan would come get the Saracens.
Very good, very good. You got another one?
I was thinking of the same thing as
Well-
Ian.
Remember Durandal?
Oh, God's there, so God will be supernatural.
God, but where would you see God in the story? I was gonna say,
God protects Oliver. in
he
the
comes
story.
directly, saves Oliver's life. And he does that more later in the book, but you don't have those examples.
And then, I know there's like the mention of demons and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
The sword, Durandal, is a heavenly sword. The dreams are example of supernatural, because they seem to come from, they predict the future, which is only God can do. So those are all examples of supernatural. The dreams, the angels, the devil, the sword. All right, number 10. Tell me about Saragossa and its importance in the story.
That's just where the Saracens live, or Marcillian, right?
What was that last part?
Isn't that just where like Marcillian, like his kingdom?
Yes, that's the capital city.
Yeah, and, it was like the last, bit of land that they had.
Yes.
And they were all surrounded by the Franks. and stuff.
Yeah, I guess it's symbolic, because if you took Saragossa, you would have had the whole country, so that's why it's so important. Tell me about the Pyrenees and their significance. Yeah, Jacob.
They are the mountains that separate Spain and France.
All right, and what role do they play in this book?
There was a pass where the French got trapped.
Yes.
They were slaughtered.
Yes, very good. We're going to skip 12. Although actually, we did define 12. What is precious? Whose sword? Valiant sword. What is Charlemagne's sword?
Oh.
Joyous. very good. So we do number 12. How about 13? That's joyous, so we got that too. We're back to 14. Somebody want to identify Naaman and his role in the story? Why don't we start with Caroline?
Okay. He's the decision maker.
Yes.
And he hires like two major parts in the story. At the beginning of the story, he sides with Ganelon. And then at the end of the story, he actually ends up exposing Ganelon. He's like, yeah, I heard the sound. You're not wrong from it.
Yeah, so I like what the decision maker, he's the kind of, he breaks the ties, he clears up the argument. So he's a counselor, very important counselor. We'll skip 15, we're not, know about Penabel. 16, when did the Battle of Roncevaux take place? There's a year.
Oh,
Yeah.
778?
Yes.
One more time?
AD 778?
Correct. And how about another date, the century that the legend was developed? Yes.
17th. Late
Okay, give me that century again.
17th.
All right, we're talking about, like, the battle took place in 778. So that would have been 1,000 years later.
So 11?
It would be the 900s, so about 150 years later,
Never mind.
which is the 10th century. And while it's on my mind, when was the book written?
11th century.
Which would be the 1000s. Those are the only 3 dates I think I'm asking you for.
Wait, so for 17, by what century did the legend of Roland develop? It's the 10th century.
Yes, which is the 900s. So you can say it either way. And then the next century, the thousands, which is the 11th century, is when the book was written. And who wrote the book?
No one knows.
We don't know. They tell me about hyperbole. I'm sorry, I skipped one. Let me back up. All right, number 18. How old is Charlemagne in the story? 38 years old.
Wait, it's the lead? No, he's 200 in the story. He's 30 in the
18, he's 38 in the story. You're right. That's how old he really was. So how old is he in the book?
200.
Yeah, so don't confuse that tomorrow. You were right about how old he really is, but if we're talking about the book, he's 200. So that's 18 and 19. Now, what's that? Well, that's what makes it, epic.
Wait, so how old is he? Wait, so how old is he? 38 or 200?
He's
Both.
actually 38.
He's 38 in reality, but he's 200 in the book. Right. Hyperbole. We talked about that earlier. Caroline.
It's an extreme exaggeration or
Yeah.
overstatement.
And an example?
I know they're talking about years. They're like, he's seen this for over 200 years, something like that.
That's an example. His age is an example. Any other examples you can think of?
I think they're talking about like how hard the soldiers have fought. They're like, never had someone fought so hard. Or
That's right.
something like that.
Anytime you see the word never is probably a hyperbole. Also, all the numbers are inflated. 400,000, that's inflated. That probably would be the distances, like he's 75 miles away, he hears the horn. That's probably exaggerated. Roland killing hundreds of men during the battle is probably exaggerated. So we're going to skip 21. Anybody know about the end-stopped lines in poetry? Yes.
Like just every single line in the Song of Roland ends in like a comma or a semicolon or a period.
Yes.
Like, is it everything?
All right. We're on number 22. You missed 22 questions. How about 23 slant rhyme, Dominic?
It's just basically like how you say concepts
or vowel tone. It can be either one. We mentioned this earlier, base and April. There's an example of slant rhyme. Base has the A sound. April, nobody would be fooled about those two lines rhyming, and yet you do hear a similar sound. Your and star has the R sound. That could be used for slant rhyme. That's called consonants.
Isn't eyes like another one?
Eyesight would be another one. Yeah. Your ear subconsciously, your ear consciously usually doesn't hear those things. That's why you have to train yourself to think about what is not usually conscious. And, oh yeah, there really is this sound there. I don't really notice it until I focus on it. We're skipping 24 and 25. 26, Bastille and Bassin.
Those are messengers that were beheaded.
The beheaded messengers, right. 27, Oud, I think is how it's pronounced. Olivia, yeah,
It's Roland's fiance and Oliver's sister.
that's about it. Mariah, I think, has read ahead, and she told us what happens to Oud. Anybody know? When she hears the news about Roland's death,
He probably,
she dies of a broken heart. She just,
I knew it. That's just how it ends always.
Yeah.
That's actually really sad, 'cause he didn't care about her at all, like when he was dying. He was just thinking about the other guys. It's a little,
Did you hear Andrew? I never thought of that. What was Roland thinking about? Was he thinking about Oud when he died? Yeah, he was thinking
all
about,
his companions.
that's right. And here
The
Oud
guy
gets,
he works for.
I told her he wasn't the person for her.
no, I don't think so. He sure thought he was, though, 'cause
Yeah. Brahmaman, 28.
Is Marcillian's wife a queen?
That's all we know. Although Mariah read ahead and she knows what happens to her at the end. Anybody want to guess?
Probably also dies.
No, she doesn't.
Gets
Yeah.
to convert to Christianity.
Yes, and they change her name.
She changes her name.
And I can't remember the name of it.
When?
At the very end.
Who doesn't die in this book? That's what I'm serious.
She doesn't die.
She doesn't die. If she doesn't die, it's Charlemagne and
Charlemagne doesn't die.
Charlemagne doesn't die. How?
200 years old.
Makes sense.
I'm trying to find her name. I want to say Juliana, which is a pretty name, but I'm not sure that's it. Huh. Well, I won't look for it now, but when she converts, it is Juliana. It's on the last page of the book. She takes on a new name and saves her neck in the process.
What is the, on the board, what's the, code? Where'd you get that?
Where?
With the teacher?
Oh, yeah, I got it at an antique store. We're almost done here. Let's focus. We just have a few more minutes. Can anybody explain or need to be explained how the poem misrepresents Islam?
How the what?
The poem misrepresents Islam.
Isn't that like, it portrays them all as cowards and just a lot of stereotypes, and it misrepresents their beliefs because it like they make this, Muslim holy trinity or something.
So two categories. It misrepresents their character, their fighting ability, and it misrepresents their religion.
Yeah, it makes them seem like they're like worshiping Satan.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely shows you they're the bad guys because they include Satan in them. All right, how about the reason Charlemagne invaded Spain? What is the reason in the book? Yeah, Dominic. To eradicate Muslims, right. Okay, there's no other, I don't see any other reason except that. In reality though, Dominic, what was,
Because some Muslims like invited him to fight other Muslims.
that's right, he was actually invited in. 31, a double,
Wait, it's
Yes,
And then what was it in real life? He was invited, right?
right, to help Muslims. That can't get more different than that, right? All right, number 31, double entendre, we already said, double meaning, jongleur is the performer who recited the poem. 3 epic characteristics in song, Roland. This would be a good one to ask you to write several sentences. Ben looks like he's got one, so let's,
Vast setting, Spain and France, vast setting.
right?
You want to keep
Yeah.
going? Okay, supernatural forces and
What are those?
God and angels.
That's
I would
two.
say in all of it. And hero kind of larger than life a little bit, and that battle he was like he still get injured.
Yeah, he decides when he's gonna die and all that. That would be a good answer. Yeah,
It's 4,000 lines and it's action packed.
in terms of the characteristics, it's a long poem, 4,000 lines, pretty long poem, yeah.
There's a narrator.
Yeah, but unlike most epic poems, how is this narrator different?
He's not a
That's right, very good. 33, we have 2 dreams, 33, 34. Anybody want to just describe one dream? You will appreciate this tomorrow when you can't think of it. We'll go, you do one and you do one. Hey,
One of the dreams he had, there were like 3 animals. There was a bear, a greyhound, and a leopard.
Right.
The greyhound was Roland, I believe. And the bear like bit his arm.
the
And,
bear was down on.
yeah, and then the leopard, like attacked his body, but the greyhound
And
didn't.
that was Marcellus.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty good description of the major characters in the battle that happened. How about the first dream?
Oh, also want to see what that one, there's also a dog that's supposed to be Roland, that tries this, and the dog tries to protect him from the bear.
That was Greyhound, she mentioned.
Oh, you mentioned the Greyhound, I'm sorry, okay, never mind. Okay, the other one was Charlemagne is sitting somewhere, and he's got a cool spear.
The Sizer Pass.
Yeah, he's sitting inside the spouse, he's got a cool lance, and then Ganelon comes up and grabs his cool lance, and he shakes it, and then
Right.
it explodes. And then Charlemagne satires it.
See, one thing that, can I just give you a huge principle of understanding literature? A lot of things in literature are symbolic. And this book is a great example. Every one of those items in that little dream was symbolic of something else. And that's what you get in literature. You have to be able to tell the difference. Good job. Got 2 more, 3 more. What century is Song of Roland written?
Yeah,
11th century or the 1000s. Skip 36, 37, Aix. Tell me about Aix.
Oh, that's Charlemagne's capital city.
Yes, in France. And the Sizer Gate, Dominic?
Entrance is in Mexico.
That's right. So you have everything you need to do this tomorrow. And my job is to make sure it's doable in the time we have. There'll be short answers, no long essay. There'll be that matching component. There'll be writing definitions. There'll be short answers where you give me a date, a definition or something, and then there'll be longer 4 to 5 sentence answers. So,
And
hang on, we're not ready to go yet, I don't think. Maybe we are.
can you explain the animal dream one more time?
Before I do, we are running out of time, but the animal dream, you got Charlemagne, and you got the bear, which is Ganelon, grabbing the right arm. You got the leopard, which is Marsilian, attacking Charlemagne. And then you got the greyhound that defends Charlemagne, which are all the components of the Battle of Roncevaux. So no extra time, but
So the bear bites who?
Charlemagne,
Charlemagne.
arm.